Before we begin tonight's story, find a comfortable position and allow yourself to relax. Let the worries of the day slowly drift away. Take a gentle breath in and a slow breath out. Tonight, you'll travel to a quiet lakeside town where unexpected love begins with a simple visit to a small bookstore. A story of warm summer evenings, heartfelt conversations, and two souls finding each other when they least expect it. Now, close your eyes, and let's begin. The town of Willow Lake was easy to miss. Most people drove through it without ever stopping. A few minutes on the main road, a glance at the lake, a quick stop for coffee. Then they were gone. But for the people who lived there, Willow Lake was more than a dot on a map. It was home. The kind of place where neighbors greeted each other by name, where old wooden boats rested along the shore, where summer evenings seemed to last forever, and where life moved just a little slower than the rest of the world. Noah Carter had lived there for nearly all his life. At 29 years old, he owned a small bookstore on the corner of Maple Street. It wasn't a famous bookstore. It wasn't even the busiest shop in town. But it was his. Every morning he unlocked the door at exactly 8 o'clock. He switched on the lights, started a fresh pot of coffee, and listened to the familiar creaking of the wooden floor beneath his feet. There was comfort in routine, comfort in knowing where every book belonged, comfort in recognizing nearly every customer who walked through the door. Yet lately, Noah had begun to wonder if comfort was the same thing as happiness. Sometimes he would look through the front window and watch couples walking past, laughing together, holding hands, sharing pieces of their lives. And he would feel something he rarely admitted to himself. Loneliness. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind that kept people awake at night. Just a quiet loneliness. The feeling that something important was missing. The feeling that everyone else's story seemed to be moving forward while his remained on the same page. That Tuesday morning began like any other. Gray clouds drifted lazily across the sky. A cool breeze carried the scent of rain from the lake. Inside the bookstore, soft piano music played from an old speaker near the counter. Noah was arranging a display of novels when the bell above the entrance suddenly rang. The sound was ordinary. The moment wasn't. He looked up and saw her. A young woman stepped through the doorway. For some reason, Noah couldn't explain why he noticed her immediately. Maybe it was the way she paused to look around. Maybe it was the quiet curiosity in her eyes. Or maybe it was simply one of those strange moments life occasionally gives you. The moments that feel ordinary at first, but later become unforgettable. She wore a cream-colored sweater despite the mild weather. A few loose strands of dark brown hair framed her face. Her eyes slowly moved across the bookshelves, taking everything in, almost as though she had finally found a place she had been searching for. A small smile appeared on her lips, and somehow the entire bookstore felt warmer. "Hi," she said softly. Noah blinked, realizing he had been staring. "Hi." Very smooth, Noah. He immediately felt embarrassed. The woman laughed quietly, not in a cruel way, in a kind way, as if she understood exactly what had happened. "This place is beautiful." Noah looked around, at the crowded shelves, the worn wooden floor, the slightly crooked sign hanging above the fiction section. Then he smiled. "You're probably the first person who's ever said that." "I'm serious." She stepped closer to a shelf near the window. "It feels like something from a movie." Noah laughed. "Well, that's definitely a first." The woman smiled, and Noah noticed something unexpected. He wanted her to keep smiling. The realization caught him off guard, because he didn't even know her name. For the next few minutes she wandered through the store, running her fingers lightly across book spines, reading descriptions, stopping occasionally to admire old covers. Every now and then she asked Noah a question. And, every time she did, the conversation seemed to flow naturally. There was no awkwardness, no pressure. It felt strangely easy, as if they had met before, as if they were continuing a conversation that had started years ago. Eventually she picked up a novel from one of the shelves. "Would you recommend this one?" Noah walked over. Their shoulders almost touched, close enough for him to notice the faint scent of vanilla perfume. Close enough to make his heartbeat stumble slightly. He cleared his throat. "Actually," he smiled, "it's one of my favorites." "Then I'll trust your judgment." Noah wasn't sure why those words made him happy. But they did, more than they should have. An hour passed without either of them noticing. Outside, a light rain began falling over Willow Lake. Tiny droplets tapped gently against the windows. Inside, the bookstore felt warm and safe, like a world separate from everything else. Finally, the woman carried 3 books toward the counter. Noah tried not to feel disappointed, but he did, a little, maybe more than a little. After paying, she carefully placed the books inside her bag. Then she looked up. Oh, a smile touched her lips. I never told you my name. Noah smiled back. No, you didn't. I'm Emma. For a second, neither of them spoke. The name suited her perfectly. I'm Noah. Nice to meet you, Noah. Nice to meet you. Such simple words, yet somehow they felt important. Emma adjusted the strap of her bag, then hesitated, just briefly, as though she were considering something. Will you be here tomorrow? The question caught Noah by surprise. Probably. She laughed softly. That's not a very confident answer. I own the store. Then I guess I'll take that as a yes. Noah smiled. His heart felt lighter than it had all morning. Then yes. Emma nodded. Good. For a moment their eyes met. Neither looked away. The rain continued tapping against the glass. The bookstore remained perfectly quiet, and something invisible seemed to pass between them. Something neither of them could explain. Then Emma opened the door. The bell rang. A cool breeze entered the shop, and she stepped back into the rainy afternoon. Noah stood motionless for several seconds after she left, looking at the door, listening to the fading sound of her footsteps. Outside, Willow Lake looked exactly the same as it had that morning. The same streets, the same rain, the same gray sky, yet somehow everything felt different. Because for the first time in a very long time, tomorrow was no longer just another day. It was the day Emma might come back. The next morning, Noah woke up earlier than usual. Not because he had somewhere important to be. Not because he had a long list of things to do. But because for the first time in months, he had something to look forward to. As sunlight slipped through his bedroom window, he found himself thinking about Emma. Her smile, her laugh, the way her eyes seemed to light up whenever she talked about books. It was ridiculous, really. He had only met her once. One afternoon, one conversation, and yet she had occupied his thoughts for most of the evening. Noah shook his head and laughed at himself. Then he got dressed and headed toward the bookstore. Outside, Willow Lake looked completely different from the day before. The rain had disappeared. The sky was bright blue. The lake sparkled beneath the morning sun, and the entire town seemed alive with the promise of summer. When Noah unlocked the bookstore door, he immediately began preparing for the day. But if he was being honest with himself, he was also listening for the bell above the entrance. Every few minutes his eyes drifted toward the door. Every time someone walked past the window, his attention followed. By noon, Emma still hadn't arrived. Noah told himself not to be disappointed. She had never actually promised she would come. She had simply asked if he would be there. That wasn't the same thing. Right, he tried focusing on work, organizing shelves, helping customers, updating inventory, yet somehow his thoughts kept returning to her. Then, just after 2 o'clock, the bell rang. Noah looked up instantly, and there she was. Emma stood in the doorway with sunlight behind her. For a moment, she looked almost unreal, like a character stepping out of one of the novels lining the shelves. A smile spread across her face. Good. Noah laughed. Good. You weren't lying. I try not to make a habit of it. Emma stepped inside, and here I was worried I'd have to track you down. Noah couldn't help smiling. Something about talking to her felt effortless, natural, as if his mind didn't need time to search for the right words. Emma walked toward the counter. I finished the first book. Noah blinked. The first one, last night. You're either a very fast reader. Emma grinned, or it was a very good recommendation. The warmth in Noah's chest returned immediately. Which means I passed the test. Barely. He laughed. Barely. I'm kidding. Emma leaned against the counter. It was wonderful. For the next hour they talked about books. Favorite endings. Characters they loved. Stories that stayed with them long after the final page. The conversation flowed so naturally that neither noticed how quickly time passed. Eventually Emma glanced toward the large front window. The lake shimmered in the afternoon sunlight. It's beautiful today. Noah followed her gaze. It is. Emma hesitated, then looked back at him. Would you like to take a walk? The question caught him off guard. Not because he didn't want to. Because he did. Very much. He simply hadn't expected her to ask. A smile appeared on his face. I'd like that. A few minutes later they were walking beside the lake. The water stretched endlessly beside them. Gentle waves rolled against the shore. Children laughed in the distance. A sailboat drifted slowly across the sparkling surface. For a while neither spoke. And surprisingly, the silence felt comfortable, not awkward, not forced, comfortable, like they didn't need constant conversation to enjoy each other's company. Eventually Emma broke the silence. So, she glanced toward him. Have you always lived here? Pretty much. And you've always wanted to own a bookstore? Noah smiled. Actually, yes. Emma laughed softly. That's rare. What is? Most people spend their lives trying to figure out what they want. Noah looked at the water. Maybe. Emma studied him quietly. And you? Noah asked. What about you? A thoughtful expression crossed her face. For a moment she seemed far away. I paint. Noah looked at her. You're an artist. She nodded. Most days. Most days. Emma smiled. Some days I feel like an artist. She looked toward the lake. Other days I feel like someone pretending to be one. Noah laughed. I think everyone feels that way about something. Emma's smile widened. And once again Noah noticed how beautiful it was. Not perfect. Not rehearsed. Real. As the afternoon continued, they wandered farther along the shoreline. Talking about dreams. Favorite places. Childhood memories. At some point their shoulders brushed together. Neither moved away. Neither mentioned it. But both noticed. The smallest touch. Yet somehow it felt important. By early evening, the sky began turning shades of gold and orange. The lake reflected the colors like liquid fire. Emma stopped walking. For a few seconds she simply stared at the sunset. It's amazing. Noah stood beside her, close enough to hear her breathing. Close enough to feel strangely aware of her presence. It never gets old, he said. Emma turned toward him, and for a moment, neither looked away. The world around them seemed quieter. The distant voices faded. The breeze softened. All Noah could see were her eyes. All Emma seemed to see was him. Then she smiled. A slow, genuine smile. The kind that reached her eyes. I'm glad I came into that bookstore. Noah felt his heartbeat quicken. So am I. The words escaped before he could stop them. Emma's smile grew softer, warmer, and neither of them looked away. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, something new began taking shape between them. Neither was ready to name it. Neither fully understood it, but both could feel it. The quiet beginning of something beautiful. Something neither of them had expected to find. And something they were already beginning to hope would last. The days that followed seemed to slip by faster than either of them expected. For Noah, mornings no longer felt routine. The bookstore was still the same. The shelves remained in the same places. The bell above the door still rang at unexpected moments. Yet everything felt different now. Because almost every day, Emma walked through that door. Sometimes she arrived with a new book already finished. Sometimes she came carrying a sketchbook beneath her arm. And sometimes she appeared with no reason at all. At least no reason she admitted. But Noah never complained. Not once. In fact, he found himself looking forward to her visits more than he cared to admit. Every conversation seemed to reveal another piece of who she was. Emma loved old movies. She preferred sunrise over sunset. She collected postcards from places she had never visited. And whenever she was nervous, she played with a small silver ring on her finger. Little details. Small details. The kind people usually overlook. But Noah remembered every single one. And somehow, Emma seemed to remember things about him too. The books he loved. The songs he listened to. The fact that he always drank coffee that had gone cold because he forgot about it while reading. The fact that he smiled whenever he talked about stories. The fact that he tried to hide his emotions whenever something truly mattered. Days turned into a week. And before either of them realized it, spending time together had become the best part of every day. One warm Friday evening, Emma appeared at the bookstore just before closing. The sun was beginning to sink toward the horizon. Golden light spilled through the windows. The entire shop seemed to glow. Emma looked unusually excited. What happened? Noah asked. She smiled. I found something. What? Instead of answering, she held up a folded piece of paper. A map. Noah laughed. A map. Emma nodded enthusiastically. A local hiking trail. And And according to this map, she stepped closer. There's an overlook above the lake. Noah raised an eyebrow. Okay. Emma grinned. Okay. That's your reaction. I don't know where this is going. Emma laughed, then pointed toward the door. Come with me. 30 minutes later, they were following a narrow trail through the woods. The evening air felt cool and pleasant. Sunlight filtered through tall trees. Birds called softly somewhere in the distance. Emma walked a few steps ahead, occasionally turning around to make sure Noah was still following. You know, Noah said. This feels suspicious. Emma looked over her shoulder. Why? You found a mysterious map. Yes. You convinced me to follow you into the woods. Also yes. Noah nodded. I've seen enough movies to know how this ends. Emma laughed so hard she nearly stumbled. You are impossible. That's what I've been told. The trail gradually climbed higher. The trees became thinner. The sounds of the town disappeared. And eventually they reached the top. Emma stopped walking. Noah stepped beside her, then immediately understood why she had brought him there. The view was breathtaking. Far below them, Willow Lake stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The water reflected the colors of the setting sun. Orange, pink, gold. The entire world seemed painted in light. For a long moment neither spoke. Words felt unnecessary. Finally Emma broke the silence. Worth the walk. Noah smiled. Definitely. The breeze moved gently through her hair. The fading sunlight illuminated her face. And suddenly Noah realized something. The view was beautiful, but he was looking at her more than the lake. The realization startled him, because deep down, he already knew what it meant. Emma turned toward him. What? Noah blinked. What? You're staring. A nervous laugh escaped him. I wasn't. You were. Maybe he should have looked away. Maybe he should have changed the subject. Instead, he smiled. Maybe. Emma's eyes softened. Neither spoke. The air between them seemed to change. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just enough. Enough to make Noah aware of every heartbeat. Enough to make Emma look away first. For several moments they stood side by side watching the sunset. Then Emma spoke quietly. I'm glad I came here. Noah looked at her. To Willow Lake. She nodded. At first I wasn't sure. Why? Emma hesitated. The playful expression faded from her face. There were reasons. Noah waited. But she didn't continue. For the first time since meeting her, a shadow crossed her features. A sadness. A memory. Something she wasn't ready to talk about. Noah didn't push. Instead he simply nodded. And somehow she seemed grateful for that. The sky slowly darkened. The first stars appeared overhead. One by one, tiny points of light against the deepening blue. Emma looked upward. They're beautiful. They are. She smiled. Then unexpectedly moved closer. Not much. Only enough that their shoulders touched. A simple touch. Barely noticeable. Yet Noah felt it instantly. Neither moved away. The world below them grew quieter. The lake shimmered beneath the moonlight. The stars multiplied overhead. And for the first time, the silence between them felt different. Not friendly. Not casual. Something deeper. Something neither could ignore anymore. Emma turned toward him. Slowly. Her eyes met his. Noah's heart immediately began racing. Neither looked away. Neither seemed capable of it. The distance between them suddenly felt very small. Emma smiled softly. And Noah knew, with complete certainty, that this moment would stay with him forever. Not because of the view. Not because of the sunset. Not because of the stars. But because it was the moment he realized he was falling in love with her. And judging by the way Emma was looking at him, she might have been falling too. After that evening on the overlook, something changed between them. Not in a way either of them openly discussed. There was no conversation, no confession, no moment where they sat down and admitted what they were feeling. Yet both of them knew. The easy friendship they had built was becoming something more. Something neither wanted to rush. And neither wanted to lose. The following week felt different. Every glance lasted a little longer. Every smile carried a little more meaning. Every goodbye became slightly harder than the one before. One evening, Emma arrived at the bookstore carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. Noah looked up from behind the counter. You brought coffee. Emma smiled. You sound surprised. I am surprised. She handed him one of the cups. Consider it repayment. For what? For all the book recommendations. Noah accepted the coffee. Their fingers brushed briefly. A tiny moment. Yet both noticed it. Neither mentioned it. Instead, Emma wandered toward her favorite chair beside the window. Outside, the lake shimmered beneath the late afternoon sun. Inside, everything felt warm, comfortable, safe. The kind of place where time moved more slowly. And somehow, whenever Emma was there, Noah wished it would slow down even more. As evening approached, Emma closed the book she had been reading. Then she looked at Noah. "Want to see something?" Noah laughed. "You ask me that a lot. And you always say yes. That's because your ideas usually turn out well." Emma grinned. "Usually. Most of the time." She rolled her eyes, then pointed toward the door. "Come on." 20 minutes later, they found themselves sitting on a wooden dock extending into Willow Lake. The town glowed softly behind them. The water moved gently against the wood. And overhead, hundreds of stars slowly appeared across the darkening sky. For a while neither spoke. The peaceful silence felt natural, comfortable. Emma pulled her knees close and looked upward. "When I was little, I used to think every star belonged to someone." Noah smiled. "Really?" She nodded. "I thought everyone had their own star. And what happened if somebody lost their star?" Emma laughed softly. "I never figured that part out." Noah leaned back on his hands. The lake reflected the moonlight. The stars sparkled overhead, and beside him sat the woman he thought about every day. It felt strangely perfect. Emma glanced toward him. "What are you thinking about?" The question caught him off guard. For a moment he considered giving a safe answer. Something simple, something easy. But instead, he told the truth. "You." Emma blinked. For a second, neither moved. Neither spoke. The words hung gently in the air between them. Noah felt his heart pounding. Maybe he had said too much. Maybe he had moved too fast. Then Emma smiled. A slow, genuine smile. "Good." Noah laughed nervously. "Good. Because I was thinking about you too." The world seemed to become very quiet. The lake, the breeze, the distant sounds of town. Everything faded into the background. All Noah could hear was his own heartbeat. Emma looked down briefly, almost shy, then back at him. And Noah realized something he had never noticed before. She looked nervous, not uncomfortable, not afraid, just nervous, exactly the way he felt. As though what existed between them suddenly mattered so much that neither wanted to risk breaking it. The realization made him smile. Because it meant he wasn't alone. Emma slowly shifted closer. Not enough to make a big difference. Just enough. The space between them became smaller. The warmth of her presence became impossible to ignore. For several minutes they sat together, watching the stars. Then Emma spoke quietly. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." She looked out across the water. "I haven't felt this happy in a long time." The honesty in her voice surprised him. Noah turned toward her. Emma continued staring at the lake. As if speaking the words aloud was difficult. "There was a time when I thought I needed to leave everything behind." Her voice softened. "Start over somewhere new." Noah listened carefully. "You don't have to explain anything you're not ready to explain." Emma looked at him. The gratitude in her eyes was immediate. "You always do that." "Do what?" "You never push." Noah smiled. "I figure people tell their stories when they're ready." For a few seconds Emma simply looked at him. Really looked at him. As though she were seeing something important. Something rare. Then, very slowly, she reached for his hand. Noah's breath caught. Their fingers touched. Then intertwined. Simple. Natural. Perfect. The moment felt so small. Yet somehow it changed everything. Neither spoke. Words weren't necessary. Their hands remained together. The stars shone overhead. The lake moved gently beneath the dock. And time seemed to slow. Noah glanced toward Emma. She was smiling softly, looking out at the water. Looking peaceful, happy, beautiful. And in that moment, holding her hand beneath a sky full of stars, Noah realized he no longer wanted to imagine a future without her in it. The thought should have scared him. Instead, it felt like coming home. Emma squeezed his hand gently. A tiny movement, yet it sent warmth through his entire chest. Neither knew what would happen tomorrow. Neither knew where this story would eventually lead. But sitting together beneath the stars, with their hands intertwined and their hearts quietly moving closer, for the first time, neither of them was afraid of the future. Because somehow, the future no longer felt uncertain. It felt shared. The days after the night on the dock felt different. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but in 100 small ways. The kind of ways only two people in love would notice. Noah noticed how Emma smiled before she saw him. Emma noticed how Noah's entire expression softened whenever she entered the bookstore. They noticed the little things. The important things. The things nobody else would ever see. And somehow those small moments became the most meaningful part of every day. One warm afternoon, Emma arrived carrying her sketchbook. She walked straight to her favorite chair beside the window. Noah watched her from behind the counter. "You've been drawing a lot lately." Emma smiled. "I have. Can I see?" She immediately hugged the sketchbook to her chest. "No." Noah laughed. "That bad?" "It's not bad." "Then why can't I see it?" Emma looked away, suddenly shy. "Because some things aren't finished yet." Noah smiled. "Fair enough." For a moment she seemed relieved. Then she opened the sketchbook and began drawing again. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows. The bookstore remained peaceful, and Noah found himself watching her. Not because she was doing anything extraordinary, but because somehow even ordinary moments felt extraordinary when she was around. Hours later, after closing the shop, they walked toward the lake as they often did. The evening air felt warm. The sky glowed with shades of gold and pink. The water reflected the fading sunlight like liquid glass. Emma seemed unusually quiet, not sad, just thoughtful. Eventually Noah glanced toward her. "You're thinking about something." Emma smiled. "Am I that obvious?" "Only to me." The words slipped out naturally. Emma looked at him. For a moment neither spoke. Then a small smile appeared on her face. "I like that." Noah's heart immediately betrayed him. Again, Emma laughed softly. "I think you're blushing." "I am not." "You definitely are." "I absolutely am not." Emma's laughter echoed across the shoreline. And Noah found himself laughing too. Because making her happy had quietly become one of his favorite things. As they continued walking, the path narrowed slightly. Without thinking, Emma reached for his hand. Natural, effortless, as though it had always belonged there. Noah looked down at their intertwined fingers. Then back at her. Emma smiled. Neither let go. The sun continued sinking lower. The town behind them gradually disappeared. Soon they were walking along one of the quieter parts of the shoreline. The water stretched endlessly beside them. The world felt peaceful, almost dreamlike. Eventually they reached a small wooden bench overlooking the lake. Emma sat first. Noah joined her. For several minutes they simply watched the sunset. The silence felt comfortable, but beneath that comfort lived something else. Something growing. Something impossible to ignore. Emma slowly leaned her head against his shoulder. Noah froze. Not because he didn't want her to. Because he wanted it so much that he was afraid to move. Emma smiled slightly. "You okay?" Noah laughed nervously. Trying to be. "You're adorable." Noah groaned. "I don't think I've ever been called adorable." "You are now." Emma settled comfortably against him. The warmth of her presence filled every corner of his awareness. The scent of her perfume. The softness of her hair brushing his shoulder. The gentle rhythm of her breathing. Everything felt close. And somehow, perfect. The sky darkened slowly. The first stars began appearing overhead. And neither seemed interested in leaving. Emma finally broke the silence. "Noah." "Yeah." She hesitated. Only briefly. Then spoke softly. "I think meeting you changed something." His heartbeat quickened. Emma continued staring at the lake. As though speaking the words aloud required courage. "I was carrying a lot when I came here." Noah listened quietly. "A lot of sadness." Her voice almost disappeared. "A lot of things I didn't know how to leave behind." The vulnerability in her words touched him deeply. Emma looked toward him. "And then I met you." Noah felt his chest tighten. Not with pain. With emotion. With something far stronger. For a long moment they simply looked at one another. The world around them seemed to fade away. The lake. The stars. The distant lights of town. None of it mattered. Only this moment. Only her. Emma's eyes searched his face. As though looking for something. As though hoping for something. Noah already knew what it was. Because he felt it too. He slowly lifted his hand. Carefully brushing a loose strand of hair away from her face. Emma's breath caught. The smallest movement. Yet somehow it felt enormous. Neither looked away. The distance between them seemed to disappear. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just two hearts slowly moving closer. The way they had been moving closer from the very beginning. Emma smiled. A soft, beautiful smile filled with affection. And Noah realized something. He couldn't remember what life felt like before her. He couldn't remember what it felt like not to look for her every day. Not to think about her. Not to hope she would walk through the bookstore door. The realization settled quietly inside him. Certain, unshakable, he was completely in love with her. And judging by the way Emma was looking at him beneath the evening sky, she already knew, and perhaps, she felt exactly the same. For a while, life felt almost perfect. The kind of perfect people rarely notice while they're living it. The bookstore, the lake, the evening walks, the quiet conversations that stretched long after sunset. And Emma, especially Emma, Noah had never imagined that one person could become such an important part of his life in such a short time. Yet somehow she had. She was there in his mornings, in his thoughts, in the songs he listened to while opening the bookstore, in the books he reached for, in every plan he made for tomorrow. And perhaps that was why he didn't notice the change immediately. At first it was small, almost invisible. Emma became quieter, more distant, not all the time, just enough for Noah to feel it, enough to make him wonder. Some days she seemed completely herself, laughing, smiling, teasing him about his terrible coffee habits. Then suddenly she would drift away again, lost somewhere inside her own thoughts. One evening Noah found her sitting alone on the dock. The same dock where they had held hands beneath the stars. The same place that had become one of their favorite spots. The sun had already disappeared. Soft blue twilight stretched across the lake. Emma sat staring at the water, motionless. Noah immediately sensed something was wrong. He sat beside her. Neither spoke for a moment. The lake moved gently beneath them. A cool breeze crossed the water. Finally Noah broke the silence. "Talk to me." Emma lowered her eyes. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she sighed softly. "I knew this moment would come." A knot formed in Noah's stomach. What moment? Emma looked toward the distant shoreline. Not at him, almost as though looking at him would make this harder. "There's something I haven't told you." The words felt heavier than they should have. Noah remained calm, at least on the outside. Inside, uncertainty had already begun spreading through him. Emma took a deep breath. Then another, as if gathering courage. "When I came to Willow Lake." Her voice trembled slightly. "I wasn't just looking for a fresh start." Noah listened carefully. Every instinct told him not to interrupt. Emma stared at the water. "I came here because I needed somewhere to hide." The words landed heavily between them. Noah frowned. "Hide from what?" Emma closed her eyes briefly. Then finally looked at him. And for the first time since meeting her, he saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of him. Fear of what she was about to say. "A year ago, I was engaged." The world seemed to stop. Noah felt his chest tighten. Not because she had once loved someone else. Everyone has a past. That wasn't what hurt. What hurt was realizing how much pain still lived behind her eyes. Emma continued quietly. "His name was Daniel." The name sounded distant, like something she hadn't spoken aloud in a long time. "We were together for years." Her voice softened, and then everything fell apart. Noah remained silent. Emma stared toward the horizon. "He betrayed me." The words came out almost as a whisper. "I trusted him with everything." She swallowed hard. "But I wasn't enough." Noah's heart ached for her. Not because of jealousy. Not because of Daniel. Because of the sadness he heard in her voice. The sadness she had carried all this time. Emma looked down at her hands. "When it ended, I felt broken." A tear slipped down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. But Noah had already seen it. "So I left." Another silence. Long. Heavy. The lake seemed darker now. The air colder. "I came here because I needed to forget." Emma finally looked at him. And Noah immediately understood something. This wasn't the real secret. There was more. Much more. Emma knew he had realized it too. Her eyes filled with emotion. "I'm leaving." The words shattered the silence. Noah stared at her, certain he had heard wrong. "What?" Emma looked away. "I'm leaving Willow Lake." "No." The response escaped him instantly. Without thought, without hesitation, Emma closed her eyes, as though she had expected exactly that reaction. "When?" His voice sounded unfamiliar, almost distant. "Next week." Every word felt impossible. Next week. 7 days. After everything they had shared. After everything they had become. "No." The word came again. Quieter this time. More painful. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know how to tell you." Noah stood suddenly. The movement surprised even him. Pain surged through his chest. Sharp and immediate. "You should have told me." "I know. You should have trusted me." Emma looked devastated. "I was scared." Noah turned away, looking out across the dark water, trying to steady his breathing, trying to understand, trying not to hurt. For the first time since meeting Emma, the future he had imagined suddenly felt fragile, uncertain, as though it might disappear. Emma stood slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you." Noah believed her. That was the worst part. He knew she wasn't lying. He knew she cared. Yet the pain remained. Because caring didn't change reality. Because next week, she would be gone. The distance between them suddenly felt enormous. Far greater than the few feet separating them. Emma wiped away another tear. Then stepped backward, giving him space, giving him silence. The one thing she thought he needed. Neither spoke again. The stars slowly appeared overhead. The same stars they had once admired together. Yet tonight they felt different. Colder, more distant. And as Emma quietly walked away along the shoreline, Noah remained standing alone on the dock, watching her disappear into the darkness, feeling his heart break for the very first time, and fearing it would not be the last. The days that followed felt strangely fragile, as though Noah and Emma were living inside a beautiful dream that might disappear at any moment. Neither of them mentioned the conversation on the dock. Neither of them spoke about next week. And yet, it was always there, quietly waiting between them, a shadow behind every smile, a clock counting down moments neither wanted to lose. 3 days remained, then 2, then 1. Noah tried to focus on the bookstore. He tried to lose himself in work, in customers, in books, but nothing helped. Every shelf reminded him of Emma. Every recommendation made him think of her smile. Every afternoon made him wonder how many were left. And somehow, the uncertainty hurt more than he expected. On Emma's final evening in Willow Lake, she arrived at the bookstore just before sunset. For several seconds she simply stood in the doorway, looking at him. Neither smiled immediately, neither spoke, because both knew this wasn't an ordinary evening. Noah slowly closed the book he had been reading. Emma walked toward him. Her eyes carried a sadness he had never seen before. "I was hoping you'd be here." Noah managed a small smile. "Where else would I be?" Emma laughed softly. The sound felt bittersweet, beautiful, and painful at the same time. For a moment they simply stood there, looking at one another, as though trying to memorize every detail, every expression, every glance, every heartbeat. Then Emma spoke. "Come with me." Noah didn't ask where. He simply nodded. Because if Emma was asking, the destination didn't matter. The walk led them beyond the lake, beyond the docks, beyond the familiar paths they usually followed. Eventually they reached a quiet meadow overlooking Willow Lake. The entire town stretched beneath them, tiny lights beginning to glow in the evening darkness. The sunset painted the horizon in shades of gold and rose. The view was breathtaking, yet neither seemed interested in it. Not tonight. Tonight they were focused on something else. Each other. Emma sat in the grass. Noah sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. For a while neither spoke. The silence felt heavy, filled with words neither knew how to say. Finally Emma broke it. "I don't want to leave." Noah's heart stopped, just for a second, then began beating faster than ever. Emma looked toward the distant lake. Tears glimmered in her eyes. "I kept telling myself it was the right thing." Her voice trembled. "I told myself I needed to keep moving." She swallowed hard. "I told myself Willow Lake was only temporary." Noah listened quietly, afraid that speaking might somehow break the moment. Emma turned toward him, and suddenly all the walls she had built seemed to disappear. "I was wrong." The words came out as barely more than a whisper. Noah felt emotion rising in his chest. Powerful, overwhelming. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Then why are you leaving?" The question escaped before he could stop it. Emma looked away. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then finally she spoke. "Because I'm scared." The honesty in her voice broke something inside him. "Scared of what?" Emma laughed softly through her tears. "Everything." She wiped her eyes, then looked directly at him. "Scared of loving someone again." Noah's breath caught. "Scared of trusting someone again." Her voice grew quieter. "Scared that if I stay." She hesitated, then finally said the words. Quote, "I'll lose my heart completely." For several seconds neither moved. The world seemed perfectly still. Noah stared at her, at the woman who had changed his life. The woman he had fallen hopelessly in love with. And suddenly he realized something. Fear was standing between them. Nothing else. Not distance. Not circumstances. Not another person. Just fear. Emma looked down, unable to meet his eyes, as though she had already said too much. But Noah wasn't afraid anymore. Not tonight. Slowly, gently, he reached for her hand. Emma looked up. Their eyes met. Noah, he squeezed her hand softly. You don't have to be afraid with me. The words were simple, yet they carried every feeling he had been holding inside. Every hope, every dream, every piece of his heart. Emma's eyes immediately filled with tears. Real tears. Not of sadness, of emotion, of relief, of being understood. For a moment she simply stared at him, as though trying to decide whether she believed him. Then she smiled. A small smile, a fragile smile, but real and beautiful. The evening breeze moved gently through the meadow. The last sunlight faded beyond the horizon, and Emma slowly moved closer. Close enough that Noah could hear her breathing. Close enough that the entire world seemed to disappear. There was something I wanted to tell you. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Noah smiled softly. What is it? Emma looked directly into his eyes. And for the first time, there was no fear there. Only honesty. Only love. Only certainty. I love you. The words landed softly, yet they changed everything. Noah felt emotion rush through him. Warm, powerful, impossible to describe. For weeks he had carried those words inside his heart. Now hearing them felt like sunlight after a long winter. Emma watched him nervously, waiting, hoping, and Noah couldn't help smiling. Because there had never been another answer. Not for him. Not from the very beginning. I love you too. Emma's eyes closed briefly, as though a weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. Then she laughed through her tears. And Noah laughed with her. Because suddenly the future didn't seem impossible anymore. It seemed full of possibilities. And as the stars slowly appeared above Willow Lake, they sat together beneath the night sky, hand in hand, heart beside heart, knowing that tomorrow would bring a choice. But for the first time, they would face that choice together. The next morning arrived quietly. Sunlight spilled across Willow Lake. The water shimmered beneath a cloudless sky. Birds sang from the trees. And for the first time in days, neither Noah nor Emma felt afraid. The fear that had followed them for weeks seemed smaller now. Not gone, but smaller. Because the truth was finally out in the open. They loved each other. Nothing needed to be hidden anymore. Nothing needed to be guessed. Noah woke early and walked to the bookstore. Yet even before he unlocked the door, he already knew he wouldn't be spending much time there. Because today mattered. Today was the day Emma was supposed to leave. And somehow, neither of them knew what would happen next. The morning passed slowly. Every hour felt longer than usual. Every minute seemed determined to stretch itself endlessly. Then, shortly after noon, the familiar bell above the bookstore door rang. Noah looked up, and smiled instantly. Emma. She stood in the doorway holding a small travel bag. The sight of it caused a brief ache inside his chest. A reminder of reality. A reminder that difficult decisions still existed. Emma walked toward him. Her expression was calm, peaceful, different, as though she had spent the entire night thinking. Maybe she had. Neither spoke immediately. Neither seemed eager to break the moment. Finally Noah smiled. So, Emma laughed softly. So, any decisions? Emma looked down briefly, then back at him, and smiled. The kind of smile that changed everything before a single word was spoken. I canceled my reservation. For a second Noah simply stared at her, certain he had misheard. What? Emma's eyes sparkled. I canceled it. Noah blinked. Again, still trying to process the words. Emma laughed, and suddenly she looked lighter than he had ever seen her. Happier, freer, as though she had finally stopped running. I stayed up all night thinking. She stepped closer, and I realized something. Noah's heart raced. Emma smiled softly. I came to Willow Lake looking for a place to heal. Her eyes never left his. But somewhere along the way, her smile grew warmer. It became home. Emotion rose inside Noah, strong enough to leave him speechless. Emma took another step closer. And you became home too. For several seconds neither moved. The bookstore seemed perfectly silent. The entire world seemed perfectly silent. Only their eyes remained locked together. Only their hearts continued speaking. Emma reached for his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, effortlessly, as though they belonged there. Because perhaps they did. Noah looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something beautiful. Not perfection, not certainty, not a fairy tale, something better. A woman choosing love despite fear. A woman choosing hope despite pain. A woman choosing to stay. And somehow, that meant more than any perfect ending ever could. The afternoon drifted by. They left the bookstore, walked through town, past familiar streets, familiar cafes, familiar storefronts. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet everything felt new, because now they no longer wondered what they meant to one another. Now they knew. As evening approached, they found themselves standing beside the lake once more. The place where so many memories had begun. The place where so many conversations had unfolded. The place that had quietly witnessed them falling in love. The sky glowed with soft shades of gold. Gentle waves moved across the water. The world felt peaceful. Emma stepped closer, close enough to rest her head against Noah's shoulder. And this time, neither felt nervous, neither felt uncertain, because they were no longer standing on opposite sides of possibility. They were standing together, on the same path, looking toward the same future. Noah wrapped an arm around her, holding her gently, protectively. Emma smiled. The warmth of his embrace felt safe, comforting, like somewhere she never wanted to leave. For several minutes they remained that way, watching the sunset, listening to the water, feeling the quiet rhythm of each other's presence. Then Emma looked up at him. Their eyes met. The fading sunlight danced across her face. And Noah felt exactly the same thing he had felt the first day she walked into the bookstore. Wonder. Only now it was deeper, stronger, certain. Emma smiled softly. What are you thinking about? Noah laughed. The first day. Emma's eyes brightened. The bookstore. The bookstore. She smiled. You were staring. I was not. You absolutely were. Noah laughed. And Emma joined him. The familiar sound filled the evening air. Warm. Comfortable. Home. As the last light disappeared beyond the horizon, they stood together beside the lake, no longer wondering whether love would find them, no longer wondering whether happiness would last. Because life would never be perfect. There would be difficult days, misunderstandings, challenges, moments of doubt, but there would also be this lake, this town, this love, and most importantly, each other. The stars slowly appeared overhead, one by one. Just as they had on the night they first held hands. Just as they had on every important evening since. Emma squeezed Noah's hand gently. Noah squeezed back, and together they watched the stars emerge above Willow Lake. Not as two strangers, not as two people afraid of the future, but as two hearts finally choosing the same story. And somewhere in the quiet beauty of that summer evening, their love story stopped feeling like an ending, and started feeling like a beginning. The beginning of every chapter still waiting to be written.